My only sibling was born exactly 18 months and 2 days after me. Her entry into this world was unexpected and a bit dramatic. Back in the olden days, they didn't have the technology to know anything about a baby before she arrived in the world. So the fact that the baby was a girl was just as surprising to my parents and to the doctors as the fact that she had an extra chromosome in her 21st pair. Kate was born with Down syndrome. My earliest memories feature Kate prominently. I vividly recall sitting in the waiting room at Huntington Hospital while my parents got her admitted to the pediatric ward. You see, our lives revolved around Kate's health by necessity. She had 7 bouts of pneumonia and 2 strokes before the age of 3 due to an underlying heart condition they also did not have the technology to understand. But my memory of that time is not of her being sick. It's not of my parents being worried. It's a core memory of tiny me. I'm sitting on a love seat with these really thin vinyl cushions, and I'm so small that my legs don't hang down, they just stick straight out. I don't wander, I don't cry. No one hands me a toy, no one tries to distract me. I just sit, and I wait. Because even at 3 years old, I understand the assignment. Sit, wait, you'll be back. And they always were, always. And life went on in my childhood, with our family focused on Kate's fragile medical state. Now, although we were not your typical siblings, we were very, very close. I included her in our neighborhood fun whenever I could. Now, I grew up in Long Island, and all the houses in our neighborhood had the same basic floor plan. It was a bit of a circle, and if you started on the far side of the kitchen, you could reach maximum velocity by the time you moved into the living room. And that was one of our favorite rainy day games. And specifically, our favorite rainy day game was to set Kate up as a hurdle in the living room. And my friends and I would leap over her as we ran our laps. Now, she loved that, but probably because she was a very low hurdle for us to clear. But then it would be her turn, right? And she would get ready to take her lap, and we'd all lie down on the floor one by one, and she'd come around eventually, and she'd flash a big smile as she'd step carefully over each one of us. And then she'd collapse breathlessly next to me in a fit of giggles. It was great. At night, we were always together, always. And I just cherished her. Right from the start, she was my heart, my very own sweet baby. And we never fought, which is not entirely true. I punched her once, exactly once, in frustration. Mom and Dad had gone out, and I was stuck there. So I punched her. And she looked at me with these shocked eyes and walked out of the room. And then about a minute later, she came back in and crawled in my lap and apologized. Which was exactly the response I did not want, right? Not at all. I was going through some throes of preteen angst. And more than anything, I just wanted to fight, right? I wanted somebody maybe even to punch me back. But she didn't. She never would have. She always accepted my frustration, my pain, my absurdity with grace. I cried big tears that afternoon, and I begged her to forgive me. We watched The Sound of Music again. And we cuddled up in the same lazy boy recliner like we did so many times before. And for the record, I never put my hands on her again. Not one time. Her simple ability to forgive without question taught me lessons that have stuck with me for a lifetime. I don't hold grudges, and with rare exception, I always take the higher road, even when the low road is perhaps the easier or more obvious choice. I lead with grace and kindness and acceptance today because of that stubborn redhead with a joyful spirit and a very forgiving heart. Throughout our teen years, Kate's health ebbed and flowed. When I was in middle school, she collapsed in her classroom. Her heart was no longer pumping blood effectively, and she needed a pacemaker. Kate spent 6 weeks in a cardiac hospital, going through multiple surgeries and extended periods in isolation to ward off infection. Honestly, nothing was ever simple about her health. And the entire time that she was in that hospital, I could feel her pain in my body. Every waking moment, my heart ached, both metaphorically and physically. Now, one evening in April, Kate was scheduled to go into yet another surgery. And my parents decided it was really important for me to attend the birthday party of the season. Now, as an adult, of course, I understand they probably just needed some alone time, right? I get it. But at the time, it was a really strange edict. Go to a party. Really? Okay, I will. As Daddy and I were driving home on the parkway, that crushing pain in my chest, the one that I have felt ever since she entered that hospital, it vanished. It was gone. And my heart, it sank. Daddy, something is wrong. I can't feel her. And he looked over at me and was completely confused. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time that I uttered these exact words out loud. I think she's dying. He called the hospital when we got back to the house. She was in surgery by then, and I came to believe that my loss of that physical connection was due to anesthesia. She wasn't in pain any longer, so neither was I. And I probably should talk about the party a little bit. I don't remember it. What I really remember about the party is that the birthday girl's mother was exceptionally kind to me that night. As my high school graduation approached, I realized I needed to get away, to take steps to become my own person. I applied to 11 colleges, and I ultimately chose the one that was 1,000 miles away from home, on purpose. Honestly, I just needed some space to breathe. Once I moved out, Kate realized that she could leave too. And she began having daily conversations with Jack and Janet, her imaginary roommates, and talked nonstop about the really fun times they were having every night at the Regal Beagle. To their credit, my parents understood that what Kate was really craving was more independence, and they began the process of finding her a group home where she too could spread her wings. Unlike me, of course, she was accepted by the first community she interviewed with, and she actually got her first apartment while I was still living in a dorm. Several years later, it really all runs together now. Kate suffered a massive stroke while showering in that apartment. It impacted her hearing and her speech. And for a while, she still tried to talk to us, but over time, we think she just got mad that nobody was talking to her, and she became silent. After college, I took a job in publishing, and in December of 1993, I began a planes, trains, and automobiles-like journey to spend Christmas with my parents, who were then retired and living in Florida, like all good New Yorkers. I went from O'Hare to Logan to Albany, where Kate was living. And when I entered her home, she smiled when she saw me. She gave me a big hug. But I could tell something was radically different from the second I walked in. After a restless night on yet another vinyl sofa, we boarded a plane together, and that holiday week was strange and awkward. My parents seemed oblivious to the changes in her, changes that screamed like a neon sign to me. And so I said it out loud again to make sure they understood. Mommy, Daddy, this is our last Christmas together. Kate is dying. A few days after Christmas, Kate and I left Florida together. We settled into the last row of a very dark airplane, and we were as alone as we would ever be. I looked at her, and I shook my head, and I just said, I can't. And she put her hands on my face, and she drew me to her chest, and she stroked my hair as I cried, and I worked towards acceptance. The call came to my cubicle late in the workday on February 28th, 1994. Kate was in the ER. Her heart had stopped, and they were trying to revive her. As we had agreed as a family more than a decade earlier, the doctors had 1 minute to bring her back, and then they had to let her go. So, I said resolutely, she's gone now. Yes, my mom replied, she's gone. Are you okay? I asked them. And they replied in unison, no. Are you okay? And I took a deep breath. And I steadily replied, yes, I'm okay. Because just as it had been some 25 years earlier, I understood the assignment. This time foisted on me, by me, and by Kate. We had come to a wordless understanding on that flight from Tampa to Albany. She would leave, and I would take care of them. I would not let them fall apart, and I would make them proud for both of us. It's been 30 years now since I looked into those deep blue eyes that held me in such regard. I have spent now more years without her than I ever did with her. But she is with me daily in how I listen and how I make space for other people's pain, in how I parent and how I still daughter, in my smile, in my patience, in my silliness, and yes, in my candor. In absolutely everything I do, she is always right here.